Bo and Luke Nation, welcome back to another amazing episode of the Bo and Luke Show. We have a guest with us today that is truly, truly inspirational. I'm going to introduce her in a little bit different way than we do normally, and I'm going to use a quote from one of her books, and the quote's from Elizabeth Gilbert, who happens to be #1 New York Times bestselling author of Eat, Pray, Love. If you haven't read that book, you should. But this is Amy Scher. She's a brave warrior and a wonderful writer. She is a living example, very much living, of what it looks like when a woman takes her health, her heart, and her destiny into her own hands. My hope is that this book will inspire many other women to do the same. That's Elizabeth Gilbert, #1 New York Times best-selling author, writing about our guest, Amy Scher. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me here. I'm really excited to be here with you too.
Awesome. Did I pronounce your last name right?
You did perfect.
Good. Luke, sometimes we get that messed up.
Yeah.
I always say, though, I answer to any name. I'm very easygoing, but you did do it correctly.
Awesome. Excellent.
You should have said sure. Right?
That's right.
I always say to people, it's like Sonny and Cher, but I have an S on the front. So it's an easy way to remember it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So Amy, tell our listeners a little about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Amy Scher. I am a writer. I write about many things, but I mostly write about humaning and healing. And what that means is that I started off writing about healing and from anxiety, depression, chronic illness after my own experience with a very long chronic illness that lasted about a decade. And I have somewhat segued into writing about humaning, which means being our true authentic selves, because not being our true authentic selves does contribute to so much of what I then have to write about healing. And so I talk a lot about life, about being yourself, about relaxing. I think that was a big piece of the healing journey that I missed, because when we don't feel good, when we're depressed or anxious or, struggling with an ongoing illness, we're on a search externally to find the thing or things that will fix us. And in that search for me, which lasted many years, I realized that so many of my emotional patterns, like being very type A, being a perfectionist, having to find the things, fighting for, my health, fighting for my happiness, this whole energy was part of what was actually contributing to my body being so stressed out that I couldn't heal. So I talk and write a lot about relaxing, being yourself, letting go, and all of that fun stuff that's so hard to do for some reason.
Yeah. Listening to you, it makes it sound, this is the type of topic where it just sounds like it should be so easy. But it's probably the most difficult thing that anybody, any journey anybody can take.
Yes, I think we as humans, and God bless us, we overcomplicate things. Like when I talk to, my students and clients, at first I say so much about being well is about just being who you really are, and just and not judging yourself, and not caring so much about what everyone else thinks, and being and following your own needs and desires. And these things seem like they would be so easy, but they're not, because we have been programmed either, when we were young, or we programmed ourselves somewhere along the way to be people pleasers, to be perfectionists, to put all this pressure on us to, be who we think we should be and have lives that we think we should have.
Yeah.
And all of this just becomes really, really hard to keep up with. And eventually for many people, it does have an impact on the physical body. But again, it's simple, but it's not, because it's so much easier in so many ways to just go to a doctor and say, give me something that will make me feel better, versus turning inward and having to deal with ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. I actually heard a quote this morning listening to another program, and it was a Steve Jobs quote around simple is the hardest thing to achieve.
Oh, it is so true. That is a great quote. That is a great quote.
That resonated with me. And then hearing you, because we would think it should just be so simple, but it's not.
It's so true. I love that quote.
Awesome. You have in your book, I wanted to quote you too, because I think this needs to get out there because I love it. But for all of our listeners, Amy's book, How to Heal Yourself from Depression When No One Else Can. And I would say the subtitle, which is at the top of the page, is A Self-Guided Program to Stop Feeling Like Shit. I mean, that is just, I love it. But listen to this, right? So this is Amy. It says, this book is for every person who can't just get help, won't just get help, or did just get help and didn't help. It didn't help. So her great hope is that the book gives the reader the peace they've been looking for. I think that is great. How many people have you? Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, how many times have we heard that? I put that in the beginning because I'm so sick of hearing in the media and in just on social media everywhere, just get help. If you don't feel good, just get help. But how many of us have really heeded that advice and then still been like, we don't feel better. So there has to be something out there acknowledging that plenty of people do the right thing and they ask for help, they get help. And sometimes the help we get is not enough, or we need to look at things from a different angle, or we need additional help. And those things are okay. People end up feeling like they're a failure when they get help and they don't feel better. So I think it's really important to be a voice for that and just say, it's okay. You're actually the norm if you get help, not the anomaly, but the norm if you get help, and you need a little bit more. You need another angle. You need to do something else except for, besides just to ask for help. And we should do that step. We should get help, but there's so many different types of help. Sometimes it takes a while to find the right one.
Yeah, for sure. Boy, man, we could go ahead, Luke.
I would say I love about the slant you take on it about doing it yourself, because like only you can make it happen, right? We're in an age where information is not the problem,
It's so true. And I always say, like, have all the support. My book, How to Heal Yourself from Depression When No One Else Can, doesn't mean you have to do it all alone. Don't get it. Sure. Don't listen to your doctor. Don't, nothing like that. What it means is and I have discovered this the hard way. And so have most of my students and clients, which is how they come to my work or my readers, is that there are pieces of our healing journey that only we can do. Because even the best doctors, and I have all the admiration in the world for doctors and therapists and alternative practitioners, but they can't get to parts of us that we can get to ourselves. So this book is all about get whatever help and support you need and what feels good to you, but also acknowledge that if you aren't feeling well, if it's not enough, if it's not working, do the part of healing that no one else can do, and add that into the mix and see what happens. Because that's where, in my own healing story, that's when I truly healed and stayed well. That's when my readers heal and stay well. My students heal and stay well is when they do the piece that's been missing all along, that we've been carrying all along.
Yeah, for sure. As part of that piece, Amy, that the person needs to do, does part of that come down to the individual like finally making the decision that they're going to do their part?
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to becoming aware of patterns and emotional baggage you may not have realized was impacting you. That's one part. A lot of people decide that they really want to do their part, but they don't know what's holding them back, what they've been carrying. They've checked off all the lists, like, okay, I was divorced and now I feel like I've healed from that. Why am I still depressed? Or, my parents were crappy parents and I feel like I've gone to therapy for 20 years. Why am I still depressed? But there are, in my book covers, really a lot of reasons that people may not immediately recognize or be aware of. Sometimes subconscious blocks, feeling not good enough, feeling unloved, being a perfectionist, all kinds of patterns that you may not immediately connect to. Oh, this is maybe what is, contributing to depression. So there's that. And the second thing is also that piece. So thank you for bringing that up. In this book, I've written several books on healing, but in this book, I made such a point about talking about action and having to do what you have to do at the end of the day. Because especially in the sort of community that I hang out in, which is a very spiritual community, very self-help, self-focused in terms of personal development, what people can do in this community, which is not our fault, but we can be so spiritual and so emotional, and so we learn to trust life and surrender that we forget we have free will, and then we're sitting there waiting for fate to do whatever it's going to do, when we can get up off of the couch and do these 3 things that might help us feel better. So I think that conversation needs to happen, more, especially in, the communities where meditation and yoga and these really great practices come into play. We can meditate, we can do yoga, we can do energy therapy like I do, we can do all these things, but also sometimes we have to choose to get out of a toxic relationship if and when we are able. We have to choose to overcome certain fears and move in a different direction for our career. And again, there are socioeconomic limitations. There are reasons we can't do everything, but if and when we are able, we are responsible for making our lives better. So I love that you brought up that piece because it's forgotten much too often.
Yeah, no, I love that. And listening to you and reading about your work and the work that you're doing. Yeah, I made a lot of real quick connections to just even different parts of life, where it takes it. You can put out any plan that you want to. You can think you're going to do something, but it really takes you putting that foot forward and finally making a choice that you're going to do something about whatever the situation is.
Exactly. And in my book, I write about this concept that I call micro movements, which is taking tiny little steps toward where you're going. What I see a lot of people make a mistake on, especially in terms of feeling better or healing or making a big life change, is trying to go from here to here in like one leap. So I'm going from depressed to happy, or I'm going from in a terrible relationship to now I'm going to find a brand new amazing relationship. and what I tell people to do is to take micro movements. It's easier to feel a little better and do a little better when you feel a little better and do a little better. So I talk a lot about that in the book, about making small changes, tiny movements to that better place. And that fits into what we're talking about with action is you don't have to change everything overnight. In fact, it will probably overwhelm you and backfire if you try. But to make the decision, and then what is my next very small step to getting to where I want to go? Let me start with that. What is that next very, very small step? And then next, what is that next step? And doing it that way. So you actually follow through instead of become completely overwhelmed by this, this to-do item that says must change my life, because that's hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Luke, it sounds like we're talking a little bit about, or maybe a lot about, building a system.
It sounds exactly like building a system, Bo. Amy, I have a question. What do you do? So nobody plans to get themselves into depression, right? So what do you do personally? Because I bet you have experience with this. What do you do personally as like a first step when you find yourself there?
So now I do a lot. I have sort of changed my life in many ways, and not just my life, not structurally like where I live and relationships and job, but I have changed so many things in my life so that I don't tend toward that place like maybe I did. And I would say the first thing that somebody can do, and the first thing that I do when I find myself feeling like I'm moving in that direction, is to call myself to the very difficult task of telling myself the truth about what's going on in my life. What is making me feel this way that I may not be dealing with? What is making me unhappy? And sometimes those things are like, oh wow, like on paper, everything looks so great, but actually I'm not as happy in that job as I thought. Or actually I've been beating myself up about this stupid thing I said to so-and-so, last week. And little things start to snowball. So I always tell people to tell themselves the truth about their life. And when you can tell yourself the truth about what's going on in your life, a lot of times you will see things that you don't when you're looking from a more logistical standpoint. If you're like writing down on paper what's going on in your life and everything looks good and you still feel like shit, guess what? That's really, really common, which is why a lot of really strong, amazing, able, emotional, wonderful people end up with depression.
Sure.
Is because things are easy to, it's easy to sort of for things to slide under the radar. Several years ago, I went through my own experience with depression. Before I wrote this book, which was the inspiration for this book in part. And it was at a time in my life where everything that I had been working toward for the last 10 years had finally come true. I had the house where I wanted to have the house. I had the career how I wanted to have the career. I was and still am in an amazing marriage. And I realized that what happened in part was 10 years of sort of drudging toward the same goal that became outdated had worn on me. So my goal had been to help as many people as possible. And I always wanted to write books to help people. And I always wanted to see as many clients as I could and to teach as many people as I can these healing techniques that I teach. And that was a driving force in my life for a very long time after I healed completely. And what happened over a series of years was that wore me out. And I realized that I was on autopilot doing speaking events, writing books, a book a year, doing all these teaching things. And yes, I wanted to help as many people as I could, but my goal became slightly outdated. It needed to be revised, which I never stopped to do, which is I wanted to help as many people as I could, but also still have a joyous life myself. And I wasn't doing that because I was so exhausted from traveling and trying to help everybody else. So I think sometimes we get on this train toward what is the pinnacle of what we want, the career, the da 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 da, and we don't stop. So now I say, like, I have to stop like every 3 to 6 months and go, are the things that I'm still doing energizing me or are they draining me? Because now if something's changed, that's okay. I mean, I think I thought maybe I'm older and wiser. But when I was younger, I thought you pick a career, you pick your goals, and then that's it. You just work toward them sort of blindly, not reassessing them along the way because that's what you've always wanted. And what I did end up realizing was, wait, by the time you get to that goal, so much could have changed that that goal is so outdated and you can kill yourself getting there. So I think it's important for us to ask ourselves along the way to our goals, do I still want this? And if so, do I still want it in the same way? And does it still feel good to get to it in the same way? And I think that a lot of us wouldn't get so off track where we have to like circle, where we get really depressed or really anxious or really sick and then have like this whole thing we have to deal with if along the way we would just check in with ourselves more.
Yeah. Wow.
It's great advice.
It surely is.
Thank you. Another hard thing to do that's so easy.
Yeah, no, I think that's super great advice. Even having the regular check-in on your goals to make or where it is that you think you're getting to so that they don't become stale. Or next thing you know, like you said, a decade has gone by and you're still charging toward the exact same thing you were 10 years ago.
Right.
And you didn't take the moments and the time to update it to make sure you were still on the right trajectory and where you wanted to go.
Right. And it's okay to change your mind. I think like so many of us were programmed. I mean, what age were we at when people started asking us, what do you want to be when you grow up? And like at that age, when you're like 6 or 8 or 10 or whatever, nobody ever tells you like, you're going to have 10 different jobs or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think so many of us, but we do that as adults too. We decide we're going to do this thing. Even now I'm getting to a point in my career. I've written 4 books and I just sort of realized in the last few months, like, I don't want to write more books on healing quite yet. Like, I sort of went on this path, which has been great. I've loved all the books that I've written and they helped so many people and all of the great things that I wanted. But I sort of had to update my mental records too, where it's like, okay, I've done that. That feels good. I don't need to do that for another 10 years. I can write about something different. So even within your career, it's important to ask yourself, do I want to move in a different direction before you wonder why you're drained of all life force energy and have to realize, you just haven't been paying attention, which is what it is. It's paying attention to your own needs and wants.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amy, how much does nutrition play into healing from even if it's brain foods? You can read about brain foods and things that really impact the mind and so forth.
Yep. I think it makes a huge difference, but I don't think it's everything. I've worked with many, many people, and I was one of those people that myself that did, no gluten, no dairy, no sugar, no, like nothing delicious. And it didn't change. It didn't cure me.
Yeah.
I think that so many things go into healing. I think nutrition's a huge one, but I also see people go to the other end of the spectrum where they're so focused on nutrition that they become anxious about eating a bite of sugar or a bite of gluten. And unless you are allergic to some of those things, I think a good glass of wine and a few bites of chocolate or whatever, I think that can be healing too. So I think it's important. It's obviously important to eat well because it does feed your brain, and nutrition has a lot to do with how your adrenal glands are functioning, which are your stress, which regulate your stress hormones. So there's so much obviously, that goes into how your body works linked to nutrition. But I also really see that it's a detriment when people are so obsessed about what they eat and so fearful. Like one of my favorite things is still like the crappiest cupcake at a supermarket. Like we live in New York City, and there's like every amazing bakery that's in all the lists. For my birthday, I just want someone to go to like Safeway for me and get me like the cheapest cupcake. Is like my favorite thing. God knows what's in it, but it's my favorite thing. So I think there's like, you need to have whatever your thing is that you enjoy, because again, it comes back to relaxing, letting go, lightening the F up. I write about that in my book, on yourself. All of that goes into how your body functions, as well as things like nutrition.
Yeah. Those cupcakes from the grocery store, they end up in my house sometimes too.
So good. And they should.
Yeah, on occasion. Yeah. So what are some things people should do from a preventative measure? Like, so even if you've experienced some level of depression in the past, or whatever the case might be, and you're not quite at that point today, and you really don't want to go back there again because you've been there.
Yeah.
What are some of the preventative type things or best practices to keep a solid mental state and to stay stable in where it is that you really want to be?
So the first thing is, don't ignore things. In the history of emotions, ignoring them has never made them go away. I think all of this, I write about this in the book, but I think all of us can attest to that no matter how difficult emotions are, in the history of emotions, ignoring them never made them go away. So we just shouldn't try that, because it doesn't work. And what happens is emotions become stuck in the physical body. And there's science to back this up now, which shows us that the chemicals in our body function differently when we have trauma, when we have stuck emotions. Our emotional and physical selves are very much intertwined. And when we repress or suppress emotions, it affects our physical body, and we feel like shit. There's just no way around that. Can I show everybody, or explain to everybody a technique that they could use that would be really helpful?
Oh, please do.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of my favorite techniques, whether someone's watching or listening, you'll be able to learn this, is in my book, but I'm going to give you the very, very shortcut of it, which is called alternate temple tapping. If you put your fingertips of your right hand on your right temple, fingertips of your left hand on your left temple, and you alternately tap while you're feeling like shit, whether it's you're feeling angry, stressed, emotional, sad, whatever it may be, this technique actually helps calm something in the body called the fight, flight, or freeze response. So all you're doing is you're tapping right temple, left temple, right temple, left temple. You're alternating tapping your temples with your fingertips. And why does this work? Two reasons. There's an energy pathway in the body, which is people who go to acupuncture will be familiar with energy pathways. But there's an energy pathway in your body that governs your fight, flight, or freeze response, which is the freak out response in your body, which is tied into your nervous system. This is what makes you feel stressed. And it starts at the temples, essentially, and it runs down the sides of your head. But if you tap those temple points alternately, it helps to calm your fight, flight, or freeze response. It helps to calm your stress response in your body and helps you to release some of those stressful emotions. We're tapping alternately because there's something called bilateral stimulation, in which you stimulate both sides of the brain, that has been shown to minimize the stress in a more effective way than if you tapped or used one side of your brain. So that's all. Next time you feel really stressed, what you're going to do, instead of ignore your emotions, are help your body process them out, release the stressful emotions by simply tapping alternately on your temple points. You can do it for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever you want. Take a few big deep breaths and move on with your day. But it really does help to calm the body down, release stress, so that you're not storing all that energy in your system. Easy, right?
Yeah.
I love it.
I do too.
It's so easy. You can do it. I mean, you can just do it. I teach kids this too because it's so
Mhm.
easy, and it just sort of diffuses and helps you release that emotional energy. Otherwise, what we do when we feel a lot of emotional energy is we go, we don't have time to deal with it. Let me stuff it down. I'll deal with it later. And then guess what? You're busy with a million other things. So
Mhm.
this is just a way to release that stress in the moment.
Yeah,
That's wonderful.
great tip. Yeah, for
We'll
sure.
start using that today.
Yes, we
Yeah,
all need.
no,
Yes,
see, that's what's great because that, I mean, you can implement that immediately.
exactly. Just you know what I usually do is just set a timer on my phone for 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and I do it, and
Mhm.
then I'm done. And then you'll really feel like, oh, I got like a reset. You'll feel that sort of, that panicked feeling. It starts
Mhm.
to just sort of dissipate, and it really does calm your nervous system down. So
Wow.
easy.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm all
That's
about
a
it.
yeah.
Yay. You'll have to report back.
I will. I
Good.
absolutely
Yeah.
will.
Yay.
Yeah, and for all of our listeners, put comments in the YouTube comment feed, in the podcast comments. Make comments about this kind of stuff and what it's doing for you, so we can share that back with Amy. That
I
would be
love it.
fantastic. Yeah. So, what about any advice for those who are seeking? Maybe they don't want to go to an official therapist and so forth, but they're looking for someone to connect with, to have the deeper conversations, like a mentor or a coach or whatever. Any advice for them on what to be looking for when they're searching out someone to speak to?
Yeah. So I always like to tell people to find the type of thing you resonate with first before you find the person to help you. So if you resonate with talk therapy, then you're going to try to find that type of person. If you resonate with somebody who does, one of the techniques in my book is called emotional freedom technique, which is a
Mhm.
very popular tapping technique used in veterans, programs for PTSD and
Mm.
trauma and stress. I teach that in a lot of hospitals. That's pretty mainstream now. If you're looking for somebody, um, if you like that type of technique where you don't talk as much, but you work through, you feel like you hold stress in your body, and you may work through something like that, then you look for that type of therapist or practitioner. And I don't see clients anymore, but I have a very well trained assistant practitioner who works under me and with me, and she does that. So what I tell people to do is find the type of practice or the type of therapy you feel most drawn to,
Mhm.
and then find somebody who practices that, because people do it backwards and then they get frustrated when they love the therapist or they love the doctor, or they love the practitioner, but they just don't like the practice. And
Yeah.
it's really important that you are drawn to, one, that you are drawn to the type of approach somebody uses, but two, that you like it so that you use it. Because if you go to somebody who focuses on mindfulness or meditation or some mind body practice, and you're not going to use it at home, that's not that helpful. So to
Right.
try to find something you think will work for you, a type of approach you think will work for you,
Mhm.
and then find somebody who specializes in that.
Great. Thank you. No, that's great. Good
Yes,
That
of
stuff.
was
course.
wonderful.
Yeah.
People
Yes.
always do it backwards, and then they start feeling like, oh, but I love my therapist, I feel bad that I don't want to see
Yeah.
him or her anymore. And then it's like, oh no, now we have another problem to deal with. So try to find the thing that you feel drawn to, and then find somebody who specializes.
Yeah, I think why that is one of the reasons for me why that is such great advice. Um, there's such I think it's changing. You can tell us if you think it's changing. There's
Yeah,
such a stigma around getting mental help or mental
yeah,
therapy, right? And even when I talk to folks, and I love talking about fitness, and then I tie it's physical fitness and mental fitness.
yeah,
So just because, we're talking mental health, don't think of that in a negative way, right? It's so important to stay just as mentally strong as you do physically strong. And oh, by the
yeah.
way, they're connected, right? I mean, it's the body. The body is an amazing thing in and of itself. Um, but that's great advice, because if you think about what works for you and what it is that you're actually seeking, it can help put you on the right track to finding the right practitioner for you.
Right. And that is actually really similar to if you're seeking a physical trainer, a fitness trainer.
Yeah.
You're probably not going to just go to some random fitness trainer. You're going to be like, do I want cardio? Do I want weights? Do I have knee problems? Do I need this? Do I need that? And then you go to somebody who focuses on that type of thing. So I always tell, my students and clients often have FOMO, like fear of missing out. Well, my friend's going to somebody who does this, this, and this thing. Well, maybe I should go. My aunt is going to this practitioner. I always say, you have to go to what you're drawn to. We each have such individual paths. Like if your aunt's practitioner had the cure for everything, we would know about it. We don't need to be following, but people do that. They get into these programs, physical, mental, whatever it may be, and they follow somebody else. And it's okay to get recommendations, but you really have to be drawn to it. And I do think our intuition plays a part. When we're drawn to something, I feel like our intuition is pulling us toward that thing because it's right for us, or it resonates at some level. So it's a more efficient way of doing things, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Funny story. My wife loves using a personal trainer. Right? If she has a personal trainer, then she'll get to the gym. She'll keep that consistency. And it's funny, the last one that we engaged with at our gym, I don't use the trainer, but she does. And my question to him while she's signing up, right? I said, listen, if you cannot behave like a drill sergeant and training her, this will not be a good relationship. Because she knows that, right? She knows like the type of trainer that she needs has to push, yell, inspire, motivate, not say, hey, okay, now it's time to do, chest press, do 3, and walk you through the program. No, it's got to be like that intense. It's got to be intense.
That's funny.
Like the boot camp experience almost.
Yeah.
So he chuckled, but I was being serious, right? I was like, look, because this won't go well for you as the trainer. Number one, she won't get what she needs out of your training. Yeah. Not that you don't know what you're talking about, but this won't go well for you either, because she's not going to be satisfied. It could be bad reviews for you. So I'm just, I'm trying to preface this on the front end that make a wise choice that you can either deliver that type of training or not. Yeah.
Because it's what somebody resonates with that works for them.
Yeah. So I think that is just fantastic advice for sure.
It works. It works.
Yep. Good stuff. Luke, this is amazing.
Oh, I'm so pleased with having you on here, Amy. This is all great information.
Thank you. Awesome. It's really great to be here.
Yeah. So Amy, how do people find your books, find more about you?
So I'm all over, as we all are these days, right? So except for Twitter, because I really don't get Twitter. I think I'm too old, or I started too late.
I don't either.
I tried like a year ago. I tried and I just could not.
I go on there and I'm like, what's going on here? And there's too much. Anyway,
it's just like too much I don't care about.
It's too much I don't care about. Me too.
Yeah.
Although every once in a while I think like I get that like FOMO thing where it's like I should. It's like I peeked in there. Nope, still not for me. So I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. But everybody can find my books and my work and lots of free stuff, free tips and such on my website, which is www.amybscher.com.
Awesome. That's great stuff. Luke, any parting thoughts?
You know what? Just thanks so much for your time. You're doing something awesome out there, Amy. So keep it up. I love this episode because listeners, I think that Amy gave you a bunch of tips that you can use right now. And we're just so grateful to have you on the show. And I got a lot out of it as well.
Thanks so much. You two are awesome. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Amy. Bold Luke Nation. Yeah, awesome. Go find Amy's book. Go to the website. Read more. Practice these tips. They're real. It's relevant. It's now. And it's something you can do right away. Bone Luke Nation, that's a wrap. Good. Tune in for a new episode every Thursday. You can subscribe to our email newsletter for information on upcoming guests, giveaways, and more. Rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to our sponsor, Sound United, for quality broadcast audio throughout Season 2.